guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Shah and this is Thoroughly Enjoyed Books. As this week has been Mental Health Awareness Week, I thought that it would be the perfect time for me to share with you a video that I've wanted to make for a while but just never known quite how to do it. I wanted to make a video about mental health in books for a really long time. I've just never been sure how to approach it. I've seen several other booktubers do these over the years and do it in a much better way than I think I will. And one of my favourite ways is how Nicole over at A Beautiful Chaos of Books did a mental health video for her mental health-a-thon readathon a couple of months ago, where she listed a bunch of different mental health types and recommended different books for those mental illnesses. Today I'm not going to be doing that as such. I'm just going to be telling you about some books that involved mental illness and that I enjoyed and got a lot out from and think are good representation, which is really hard in mental health, I will put out there, because everybody's experience is completely different. So these books are based on my experience and people close to me's experience and how they've responded to these books. So the way I've decided to do this is I'm just going to recommend 2 adult, 2 YA and 2 non-fiction books that I think really do a good job of depicting mental health, whether that be in a positive light. I think people say that good mental health representation is just presenting it as not something that takes over somebody's life. However, I think there are certain mental illnesses where that is what the illness does. So when I'm talking about some of these books, I'm not talking about them being a nice, happy representation of mental health or a good representation, because I'm not too sure what exactly that means. However, they are ones that I perceive to be actually quite accurate. I have read a lot of books about mental health in the past where I think they have had disgusting portrayal, where mental health seems to be cured by getting into a new relationship and falling in love and all that stuff. That is my idea of bad representation. So there's none of that here. I'm going to start off with the non-fiction books, which I think have been really helpful for me. First up is a book that I'm still actually reading, and that is It's Not Okay to Feel Blue and Other Lies. Inspirational people open up about their mental health. And this is a collection of essays curated by Scarlett Curtis. This has about 70 plus essays in it from a number of different influential people. So there are actors, authors, entrepreneurs, all sorts of different people who have contributed to this book and shared a little snippet of their experience with their own mental health, which I think is so powerful, so phenomenal. I'm not very far into this book. I'm about 70 pages in, but every essay I've read so far has made me feel something. And I don't want mental health to become this inspiration porn type thing. However, this book has been really helpful in helping me realise that I'm not alone, that sometimes my feelings, you know, might be exaggerated. They are still valid and they are still something I have to live with and deal with. This is a very, very good book, which when I've finished, I will be doing a full video on for sure. And the next book that I have to recommend is Wishful Drinking by Carrie Fisher. I want to recommend this book and also her other book, Shockaholic. Carrie Fisher was an actress who sadly passed away a few years ago, and she is known for portraying Princess Leia in Star Wars. As you know, I love Star Wars and Princess Leia, which is why I have her tattooed on me. Carrie Fisher was a huge inspiration to me. So Carrie Fisher was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and in her memoirs she's very open and honest about that as well. However, she also suffered from bipolar disorder. I myself suffer with bipolar disorder, specifically type 2, and reading this book and her thoughts and feelings and why she, you know, did the things that she did just helped me understand that even though my illness is similar, it's also very different, and we all have a different battle with illness, but we're also not alone. But I just found that this book was a very good look at how we can very easily turn to a crutch when we are dealing with our mental health, and in particular people with bipolar disorder tend to turn to drugs and alcohol. I read this at the beginning of this year. I read her other memoir a few years ago and adored them, and recently I've just been thinking about this and have decided I'm not going to drink alcohol anymore because it doesn't gel well with my brain. This one's also very short, so easy to get through, and the thing I will say about this is it's very raw and honest. She does talk about things that you might be thinking, why would you admit that? Why are you glorifying this? She explains everything in it. Moving on to 2 YA books then, and I think you'll notice I've tried to avoid books that are commonly talked about on BookTube. These 2 are ones that when I think about mental health and the depiction of mental health, their themes really resonate with me. So we have Am I Normal Yet by Holly Bourne. This is a book about a young girl who suffers from OCD. Now I know several people in my life who suffer with OCD. Some people suffer with it really bad, and if my memory serves me correctly, this girl is obsessed with washing her hands, and to the extent where her hands bleed and she uses bleach to wash her hands. I'm not entirely sure on that because it's been a while since I have read this book, but that is what I think about when I think about this book, and that is what I have had experience with other people that I know who have obsessively washed their hands because they can't get rid of the smell, or their skin wears away to the bleed and that is the only time that they think they're clean. It's a very complex mental health issue that isn't discussed a lot at all on BookTube. There are a couple of other books as well that focus on OCD, so Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I haven't had any experience with that particular type of OCD, but I've been assured that it is actually quite good representation. And there is another book about OCD that was quite popular a couple of years ago, but I can't remember it, and if I can, I will put the title here just so that I haven't ignored it. This is a really good look at OCD and how to support somebody with OCD as well, which I think is something missing from a lot of books. And another one is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This is a book that I don't think specifically discusses the mental health element. However, it's very clear that there is a mental illness there, and I believe it to be some sort of PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, or traumatic amnesia. This is about a girl who, following a summer that she remembers nothing about, returns back to her family island, and none of her family members are there, and she's trying to figure out what's happened and what has she done. So I very much enjoyed this book. Like I said, it's a very good look at how trauma can affect our memories and how we can forget things. And this book resonates with me quite well because there's a lot of things in my past that I just can't remember. Huge chunks of my teenage years that I don't have any recollection of. And if somebody tells me about something that happened, haven't got a clue. So I think that because this character did suffer such a trauma, it is a very good depiction of what can actually happen following that trauma and how our minds work to protect us. And then moving on to the adult books. Now, these are two that are probably quite controversial. One of them is autobiographical and another one I really resonate with, but I think some people don't see it as good representation, which is why I said mental health is quite hard to talk about in videos. So the first is Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. This is probably one of the most famous books about mental health. Again, it's been a really long time since I did read this book. I studied it at university, I adored it, and this has a look at depression and how depression was treated in the past, particularly how women with depression were treated. It's no secret to everybody that mental health is such a taboo subject. It was previously seen as a very women-focused illness, described as hysteria. A lot of women were put in asylums for their mental health. However, depression in particular was treated in such a horrific way. I believe the treatment in this book is electrolysis, where electrodes are stuck to your body and you're sent electric shock. This is also discussed in Shockaholic by Carrie Fisher, so if you want to see how the depiction in this book, which is fiction but it's based on true-ish events and a more recent development in it, give that book a read because it is very interesting. I think this is a classic book about mental health and one that a lot of people should read. I will never say everyone should read a mental health book because, you know, triggers, and I'll leave trigger warnings down below as well. And then the last book is probably going to be my most controversial recommendation, although I'm not sure if these are recommendations or just mental health books that resonate with me. I'm not sure on that. That is The Silver Linings Playbook by Matthew Quigg. I read this book a long time ago now, about 6 years ago, and this was when I was first being assessed for my mental health and the possibility of me having bipolar disorder was first brought about. In some ways, it potentially pushed me into the denial side because I have very much been in denial of my mental health for a very long time. However, this book follows a man who finds his wife cheating on him and ends up in a psychiatric hospital, and he suffers from bipolar disorder. Now, his is very extreme and very messy compared to mine. Again, all mental illnesses are different, but it does show the chaotic nature of mental health, the inability to maintain relationships, the memory loss, the inability to keep control of your thoughts, the paranoia, the pushing people away, all of that kind of really messy stuff. It is very triggering. I believe this will be a trigger for a lot of people. It does discuss triggers in it as well, particularly because whenever the main character hears his wedding song, he is sent into a spiral of catching his wife cheating on him again. Overall, I think it is such a raw and important depiction of mental health, of bipolar disorder in particular, because I think when we talk about good representation, we shouldn't just be talking about, you know, we can recover from this, we can move on. You need to see the reality of it and the rawness of it, which might be controversial but I think it's so important because one of the debates I've seen going around Twitter a lot this week, because it's Mental Health Awareness Week, is that people don't often talk about more complex mental health issues. So people seem to be very open about depression and anxiety, people are very supportive of that, but if you get to the more complex mental health issues, so even suicide, bipolar, schizophrenia, personality disorders, all the other different types of things, people don't really understand them or how to deal with them. And I think a lot of people will be there until you're symptomatic. I find this in my life that when I'm symptomatic, you know, everyone's supportive and then my symptoms show up and I'm potentially crazy. Anyway, that's a discussion for another video. Those are my recommendations. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you've thought of them. As I said, it's quite personal when recommending mental health books and if they have actually, you know, good representation. But I think that we all connect with a book in a different way. Let me know down below as well if there are any books about mental health that you think everybody should read or think that are, you know, very good books for people to read. And also I'm going to be doing a discussion. I'm going to be taking part in the booktube round tables on mental health on the 19th of October. It's 11 p.m. in the UK. I'm not sure what the time zones are elsewhere, so I'll leave the information about that down below. This is going to be a group of booktubers all getting together to discuss their mental health and how it affects them interacting with booktube. As you might have noticed, I've been quite absent lately because... Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I look forward to seeing you in another video very, very soon. Bye.